back with another quick book review. This one is called We Rode the Orphan Trains by Andrea Warren. And the Orphan Trains are a really crazy episode in American history where between the years about 1850 to 1930, give or take, about 200,000 orphans were transported by train to the Midwest to be rehomed. Legal adoption wasn't really a big thing until the 1900s. And so they would take these kids. Some of them were orphans, some of them were half orphans, some of them were destitute children of immigrant parents. And, but basically, they would take these kids from orphanages or off the street and put them on trains and ship them out to families in the Midwest. Now, some of them, and this is a story of 9 stories of these children. Most of them are all dead now. I mean, like the last one, they stopped running it about the Great Depression. But for about 70, 80 years, they were sending kids out west to be rehomed into families. And it was just crazy. All kinds of crazy things happened. Some of them became like governors and lawyers. Some of them did not fare very well at all. But we rode the orphan trains. I mean, there are some documentaries out on YouTube that you can watch, but this is before telephone. People had telephones, so you can just call the foster family, like, hey, how's the kids doing? You were dependent on letters or visiting the homes, and they would put these kids on the orphan trains, and basically they would stop in a town, and the whole town would show up to see these kids and see the families where they were going. And um, but it was really interesting. I think this book tries to paint the best possible picture of it. And I'm not really saying too much about it. I just think it's really fascinating. Um, Supposedly, around 1850s, up to 5% of the population of New York City were homeless children, either on the streets or in orphanages. So, like 1 out of every 20 people that lived in New York City was a homeless child. So they put them on trains and sent them out west. And 200,000, around 200,000. So some of them, their stories were told, most of them not. But, you know, some of them, their records were sealed. Some of them had no records. So it's just really trippy. And this book has lots of photographs in it. It's a really simple book. It's a really short and simple book. I have another one that's quite a bit more in depth and detailed, but it shows, some of the kids' photographs. Obviously, these kids in the orphanages and on the streets, they were barely surviving. They're on like starvation rations in these orphanages. So um, they would dress them up for the pictures and they would take a photo and send them out. Some of it is really sketchy because they have sponsors by the Astor family, and one of just the insanely wealthiest families in America. So, but I think it's really interesting, especially with what's kind of coming to light in modern times. I'm sure there were a lot of people working the charities and do-gooders, people just trying to do good things. I'm sure there were a lot of people who took advantage of basically free kids. Here, his kids. What do you want? Farm labor? What do you want? Household servants? Um, Maybe you would just want to give this kid a nice Christian home. Maybe you want something else. But 200,000 kids were shipped west on orphan trains and given to families. Some of them were, like I said, some of them, their stories were followed up and they were checked on them. A lot of them are just kind of like lost to history. But I thought it was just a really crazy episode in American history that I don't think a lot of people know about this. You don't really hear about it. It's definitely not. And I was definitely not introduced to this topic in school. So we rode the orphan trains. Orphan trains. Crazy, crazy stuff. But we can only just look back and speculate and analyze the stories that we're given. You know, probably I think being adopted as a farm laborer was probably better than starving on the streets of New York. But yeah, great, really interesting stuff.